Are you ready, Oliver Cleary?
I'm trying to think of it.
This one's from Matt Kurzel. What and why did the Korean War start, and why did it end?
Well, it's been a little while.
Turn towards me.
Okay.
Sorry, we
It's
don't
been a
have
little
the
while since I've read up on this, but as I understand it, it was fought as a result of larger Cold War context of Stalin helping Mao Zedong in China, and let me go back a little bit. At the end of World War II, North Korea was allotted to the Soviets, if memory serves, and so they were able to install friendly leadership in North Korea.
communists.
Communist, yes. When I say friendly leadership, I mean communist. South Korea was occupied by the Americans and was, of course, given American-friendly leadership. But in the larger context of China, that war had been going on for decades, and the Japanese invasion had temporarily allied Mao Zedong with Chiang Kai-shek. But ultimately, when the Soviets invaded Manchuria, they handed it over to Mao Zedong, and they gave him all the weaponry they had, all the support they had. That sort of put Mao Zedong on another level. And Chiang Kai-shek was an extremely corrupt and unpopular leader anyway. He had whole divisions of his army deserting to Mao Zedong, and he had to hire gangsters at certain points to keep the fighting going for him. Anyway, by 1949, he'd been driven out of China, and his government fled from Chongqing to Taiwan, where they still are today, descendants. But that created a solid communist bloc from the Soviet Union through to North Korea. And the unification of Korea was the subject of some debate. I've read about it, but it's been a while. In any event, the North Koreans decided to settle the issue forcibly and invaded South Korea. The Americans were driven back to the Pusan perimeter in the southeast of the country.
Southeast of Korea.
Yeah, southeast
sure
of Korea. The Pusan perimeter, yeah. It was like, if you look on a map, it's like the tiny, like the southeasternmost portion of the nation. General MacArthur landed his force at Incheon, which is south of Seoul, which was kind of, I don't know, if Pusan is down here, Incheon is up here. So it was kind of a brilliant move in a way, that he cut off the North Korean army and drove them out of South Korea, operating pursuant to a United Nations mandate. And at the time, the Soviet Union was boycotting the United Nations because Mao Zedong wasn't given a seat on the Security Council. Taiwan still held that seat. So, France, Britain, America, and Taiwan/China were all, going to support this crossing the line from South Korea to North Korea.
With the UN backing, I presume?
Yeah, with the UN backing. The multinational force, but, predominantly American and British. But they tried to conquer North Korea, which, who knows if they ever would have successfully achieved that or not. They got pretty much to the border with China, but the issue was MacArthur was such an asshole, I think. I mean, he was rattling a saber at China, saying that it might be necessary to nuke Manchuria, or it might be necessary to put nuclear waste in the Yalu River to, the river separating China from Korea, to keep communists out. Which, to Mao Zedong, that does not sound like a... these are not the sorts of threats you want to hear from a large, ideologically hostile army that's currently conquering your ideologically friendly neighbors right on your doorstep. It would be like if somebody invaded Mexico from Guatemala and they were saying that it might be necessary to nuke Texas and line the Rio Grande with radioactive waste. I don't think we'd put up with that either. So the Chinese invaded from North Korea and then pulled back, which was the same move that they did in their clashes with India and Kashmir the year before. Sort of like a show of force and then withdrawing to give the enemy a chance to respond, by pulling back, which MacArthur didn't take. He kept going. So then the Chinese attacked again in force around the Chosin Reservoir and so forth, trundled the Americans out of North Korea, retook Seoul, essentially not quite down to the Pusan perimeter again, but, further south, until finally Truman sacked MacArthur and replaced him with Matthew Ridgway. Matthew Ridgway managed to counterattack, and the current borders were established. Why did the war end? I mean, really, it was a stalemate. You had America and its allies on one side, you had China and the Soviet Union on the other side,
Yeah, was it pretty much that the fact that there was no ground being gained on either side, and both sides kind of threw their hands up and said, fuck
So
it.
how did they come to make the DMZ where it is now? How did they ground
was
those
the-
lines?
Those lines were crafted by the fighting in the field. I mean, that was where they stopped fighting. I mean,
But they just took 20 paces away from each other and dropped a stake.
as far as I know, and Chris would know more about this because he was actually there, the DMZ varies in width and so forth. I
Yeah.
could be wrong. I mean, it could just be pullbacks. And I've spoken to soldiers who said they fought there, who said that they maintained their positions and they became part of the DMZ. Who knows? That's gonna be bullshit. You know,
Wow.
it seems like in some places it's much narrower than in others. But yeah, you're right. The standard is about a mile.
So the Korean War ended because they all said, fuck it?
I think so. Yeah, pretty much.
Sweet.
Stalemate.
Now, how did
I'm gonna
BJ
pause
Honeycutt
this.